A developer types one command. 60 seconds later, 412 packages are installed. Not used, installed. 412 directories, 187 megabytes, to render the word hello. Somewhere along the way, the industry decided this was normal. It isn't normal, it's a posture. Every one of those 412 packages is a person you've trusted with code execution rights on your laptop, your CI runner, and your production server. You haven't met them. You haven't read their code. You've agreed in advance to install whatever they ship next Tuesday. This essay is about the rebellion against that default and the 5-question checklist that separates engineering from installation. The pitch for adding a dependency is always the same. It's small, it's well-tested, it saves an afternoon. Each of those claims is measured against the wrong baseline. The cost of a dependency isn't the time it saves on day one. The cost is the bill it sends every quarter for the rest of the project's life. That bill has 5 line items and almost no team tracks them. Line item 1, install time. A clean install of a modern React project takes between 40 seconds and 3 minutes. Multiplied across a team of 12 engineers, across CI runs, across Docker layers, that's hours of engineering time per week spent waiting for unused code to land on disk. Line item 2, disk and memory footprint. A typical Next.js application ships with a node modules directory between 300 megabytes and 1.5 gigabytes. The same project's actual source code is usually under 3 megabytes. The ratio is roughly 500 to 1. Line item 3, security surface. Every transitive package is an entry point. The NPM registry hosts more than 3 million packages, and that 412 from the cold open is the lean end of the spectrum. Pick a framework with batteries included, and the number multiplies. A standard Create Next app project pulls in roughly 1,200 of them by the time you reach npm run dev. Each one is permitted, by default, to run arbitrary code during install via lifecycle scripts. Line item 4, churn. Every dependency has a release cadence you don't control. Dependabot opens pull requests. Engineers triage them. Sometimes they merge a breaking change at 11 p.m. The cumulative cost of dependency maintenance on a mature code base, measurable by anyone who tags their own Dependabot triage hours for a quarter, tends to land somewhere between 5 and 15% of senior engineer time. The exact number isn't the point. The point is that no one budgets for it. Line item 5, comprehension debt. When a junior engineer asks how authentication works in the codebase and the answer is, it's handled by Passport and 7 middleware packages, I'd have to check the docs. The team no longer owns its own software. It rents it. None of these costs show up in the pull request that adds npm install some package. All of them show up in the next 2 years of velocity. The reason dependency bloat is a security and reliability problem, not just an aesthetic one, is that the npm trust model has no concept of distance. When a project depends on a package, it depends on every package that package depends on, recursively, with full execution rights, forever, with automatic updates. Consider the canonical examples, condensed, because the pattern matters more than the dates. In March 2016, an 11-line package called leftpad was unpublished from npm. Thousands of builds across the industry broke within hours, including React, Babel, and parts of the Node ecosystem itself. In November 2018, the maintainer of EventStream, a package downloaded roughly 2 million times per week, handed control to a stranger who'd emailed asking to help. The new maintainer injected code that targeted a specific Bitcoin wallet application and exfiltrated private keys. In October 2021, ua-parser-js, used by Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon, was hijacked for a few hours and shipped a cryptocurrency miner plus a credential stealer to every machine that ran npm install during that window. In January 2022, the maintainer of Colors and Faker, both with tens of millions of weekly downloads, pushed an infinite loop into both libraries on purpose as a protest. Production logs across the industry filled with garbage characters until the packages were rolled back. In none of these cases did the affected teams choose to depend on these packages directly. In every case, they'd been pulled in as a transitive dependency, 4 or 5 levels deep, by something else they actually wanted. That's the trust model. A package 3 hops away in the dependency graph has exactly the same execution privileges as code you wrote yourself this morning. The graph doesn't distinguish. The fragility isn't a bug in any one package. The fragility is structural, which brings the 5 questions back into focus. Because if the cost is structural, the only fix is procedural. Senior engineers who've lived through enough supply chain incidents tend to converge, independently, on roughly the same checklist before installing anything. It has 5 questions. The order matters. Question 1. Can the standard library do this? Node, Dino, and Bun in 2026 ship with native test runners, native fetch, native HTTP servers, native file watching. native SQLite, and native typed arrays. A surprising amount of code that pulls in Axios, NodeFetch, Jest, Chakadar, or better SQLite 3 is replacing two-line wrappers around already present native APIs. Question 2. How many transitive dependencies does this package add? The number is a hard signal. A package that adds 2 transitive dependencies is qualitatively different from one that adds 97. Both might solve the same problem. Only one of them has been audited by the maintainer. Question 3. Would I be willing to vendor it? Vendoring means copying the package's source code directly into the repository, taking ownership of it, and updating it manually. The question isn't whether you actually will. The question is whether you could, whether the team understands the code well enough to maintain it if the maintainer disappeared next week. If the honest answer is obviously not, it's too complex. That's the answer. The team has just acknowledged it's taking on a maintenance burden it could not have produced itself and cannot fully review. The dependency isn't infrastructure at that point. It's a hostage. The willingness to vendor test is the cleanest filter in the framework because it forces a question most teams refuse to ask out loud. Do we understand what we're installing, or do we just trust that someone somewhere does? Question 4. What is the bus factor of the maintainer? The NPM registry is full of critical infrastructure maintained by one person, in their spare time, with no funding for 15 years. Sometimes those people sell their package. Sometimes they get tired, sometimes they retire, sometimes they pass control to a stranger who emailed them asking to help. Each of these is a known failure mode, and each has happened in production. Question 5. Is this code or is this culture? Some dependencies exist because they solve a hard problem. Cryptographic primitives, parsers, compilers. Others exist because at some point a tutorial told a junior engineer to install them, and the habit propagated. Is odd, is even, is number, left pad, right pad, kind of. None of these are engineering decisions. They're inherited reflexes, installed by people who learned to code in an ecosystem that treated npm install as the answer to every question, including the ones a 6-character function would have closed. A team that runs every proposed dependency through these 5 questions won't block every install. It'll block roughly half of them. The half it blocks is the half that would have generated the next 2 years of pull request triage. For most of the last decade, the dominant narrative in web engineering treated dependency count as a neutral fact. More packages meant a richer ecosystem. Empty node modules meant a project that wasn't serious. That narrative is quietly reversing. Sindre Sorhus, the most prolific publisher in the NPM ecosystem with over 1,000 packages to his name, has spent the last 2 years deprecating and consolidating his own utilities, citing the burden of maintenance, and the fact that most of them are now one-line wrappers around APIs that landed natively in Node. Dino was designed from day one around the assumption that the standard library should be large enough that most projects need almost nothing else. Bun is built around the same premise with a different runtime. Even Node, traditionally the most conservative of the 3, has shipped a native test runner, a native watch mode, native fetch, and a native SQLite driver in the last 24 months. The market is correcting, slowly, asymmetrically, but unmistakably. The teams that get there first aren't nostalgic. They aren't anti-JavaScript. They're simply teams that have done the math on the 5-line items: install time, footprint, security surface, churn, comprehension debt, and decided that fewer, deeper, better understood dependencies is a measurable engineering advantage. When the most prolific publisher in the registry is deprecating his own packages, and the runtime itself is absorbing what used to be the top 10 NPM downloads of the year, that's the market speaking. Quietly, in its own dialect, and without asking permission. The uncomfortable part is this: most engineering teams already know the framework. They've seen the incidents. They've read the postmortems. They install the dependency anyway because the deadline is real and the bill arrives later on someone else's quarter. The rebellion isn't against NPM. It's against the version of the job that pretends installation is the same thing as engineering. If the structural fragility of all of this still feels abstract, there's an earlier essay on this channel, The Micro-Dependency Tax, How 11 Lines of Code Broke the Internet, that puts a single number on how far a dependency 3 hops away can reach when it falls. The kind of number you can't estimate without seeing the chain laid out end to end. If you found this essay useful, that one is the receipt.